Welcome. Today, we are diving into a huge shift happening in business, and that's the move from old school forecasting to the world of predictive intelligence. So, to kick things off, let's start with a question that, it might feel a little too real. Now, we're starting with this because it cuts right to the chase. It gets to the heart of a really common and, frankly, a very expensive problem. Think about it. Is your demand plan actually based on hard data, or is it more of a, let's call it a negotiated settlement between what sales wants, what marketing hopes for, and what finance will approve? For decades, this was just how it was done. The standard approach to forecasting was pretty simple. You take last year's sales, maybe add a couple of percentage points for growth, and you'd call it a day. It was literally like trying to drive a car forward while only looking in the rearview mirror. But here's the thing. In a world where new trends can go viral overnight and supply chains can get completely upended in an instant, that old method, it's not just outdated, it is actively dangerous for the health of a business. So let's get specific. Let's break down exactly why this old way fails so spectacularly. We're going to look at 4 distinct blind spots in the traditional model and see the real-world multi-million-dollar price tags that come with them. Okay, the first blind spot, and you could argue it's the biggest one, is that it relies way too much on human input. And let's be honest, people are biased. Sales teams are eternal optimists, or sometimes they'll lowball their numbers to make their quotas easier to hit. All of that emotion just poisons the data from the start. I mean, take this classic scenario from a company we'll call TechVenture. Their VP of sales, and his heart was in the right place, consistently padded his forecast by a whopping 40%. Why? He just wanted to make absolutely sure his team would never run out of stock to sell. Simple as that. But the consequence of that political number? It was massive. It resulted in $8 million of company money being completely tied up in inventory that just wasn't selling. It was sitting on a shelf because the real demand was never actually there. And this is where the data just speaks for itself. When you compare those human-adjusted forecasts to ones generated by a pure algorithm, for most products, the algorithms are consistently 15 to 20% more accurate. Why? Because they don't have feelings and they don't have a sales quota to hit. All right, let's move on to blind spot number 2. Traditional systems are, well, they're pretty easy to fool. They have no way of telling the difference between a real organic increase in demand and an artificial spike in sales that was caused by, say, a big promotion. This is a perfect, almost painful example of how a success can backfire. At FoodBev Co, they ran a fantastic buy one, get one promo that tripled their sales in March. Amazing, right? But the planning system just saw that spike and thought, hey, this is the new normal. So it forecasted the same for April. Of course, April came, the promo was over, and sales dropped right back to the baseline. So what was the bottom line? That one simple mistake, not being able to tell the difference between baseline sales and a promo lift, cost the company over $1 million in pure, unadulterated waste. We're talking about perishable stock that literally rotted in a warehouse. Okay, blind spot number 3 is a huge one. Your company's internal sales history knows absolutely nothing about what's happening in the outside world. It's in a bubble. It can't see a hurricane coming, it doesn't know a competitor just slashed their prices, and it definitely can't check the weather forecast. At a company called Agrichem, their old model, which was based only on last year's sales, said fertilizer sales would kick off on April 1st, just like they always had. But the real-world weather forecast showed a late freeze that was going to last until April 15th. And you know what? No farmer is buying fertilizer when the ground is frozen solid. And this is where the new model is just brilliant. By doing something as simple as integrating external weather data into their plan, they were able to shift their production and distribution by 2 weeks. That one change prevented their product from just sitting around and degrading in warehouses, and it saved them $2 million. And finally, we get to the organizational blind spot. Honestly, some of the biggest failures happen when marketing, sales, and operations are all working from different playbooks. They're not talking to each other, and they're not aligned on the same numbers. Just look at this breakdown from fashion retail. Marketing puts together this absolutely brilliant influencer campaign, and they correctly predict it's going to cause a 300% lift in sales. But that message never got to operations. Operations just planned for a standard 10% bump. So what happened? The campaign went viral, the product sold out in 4 hours, and the company was left with a PR nightmare and thousands of angry customers. That single breakdown in communication, that one disconnect, resulted in an estimated $4 million in lost sales. Money just left on the table, all because the teams weren't working off the same number. Okay, so after looking at all those really costly failures, let's talk about the solution. Let's see how we can build a better way forward. It's time to move from a world of pure guesswork to a world of real intelligence. You see, Demand Planning 2.0 isn't just a small tweak. It's a fundamental shift in thinking. It's about moving away from just looking at historical averages and internal data, and instead, fully embracing things like demand sensing, external signals, and true predictive intelligence. Now, at the very heart of this new approach is a concept called demand sensing. And it's not about what your customers bought yesterday. It's about using all the data that's out there, social media trends, economic news, weather patterns, to predict what they're going to want to buy tomorrow. And here is the really crucial insight. You do not need a perfect crystal ball forecast to see incredible results. Even small, tiny gains in accuracy create huge financial returns across the entire business. Think of a better forecast as the master laborer that moves your whole P&L. It directly reduces the amount of inventory you have to hold. It increases your revenue because you have fewer stockouts. It cuts down on all that expensive rush shipping, and it just flat out slashes waste. But we have to be really clear about something. This isn't just about going out and buying a new piece of software. It's about building a new culture and a new strategy that gets embedded across the entire company. And that really brings us to the final and most important point. The ultimate goal here is to get everyone aligned on a one-number strategy. It's to stop the endless internal debates about whose forecast is right, and instead get the entire organization to execute flawlessly against a single data-driven truth. So the real question you have to ask is your organization built to debate opinions, or is it built to execute on data?